It's my honor to welcome my friend, Mr. Jorge Fernandez from Pendleton Group. Thank you, Sebastian. Welcome again. Brandon, welcome. Thank you. John, you're welcome, and then we turn it over to Jorge.
Okay, so welcome to you all, and good to see Jorge. I haven't seen you in quite a while. This is an exciting session. It's titled Perspectives on Innovation in Georgia, but it has a focus on Peachtree Corners City. And so I turn it over to you to really conduct the seminar.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Ani, for the opportunity to be here. It's an honor, twice honor. Number one, it's because I really enjoy being engaged with this conference since its incipient stage back when I was over at MAC. And the second part is it's a really great topic and with great conversation and guests that we're going to engage in a few seconds. So this is great. I also want to thank the audience for participating and encourage your questions in Q&A. I will be moderating and monitoring that. So anyhow, innovation in Georgia, focusing on Peachtree Corners and specifically on CuriosityLab. I find this is a topic that is fascinating. It's one of my passions. I think mobility, I've been engaged with that for the last probably 10 years or more when we were promoting the different ecosystems from Atlanta. So this afternoon, we'll be having a conversation about this topic with Sebastian Lafon and with Brandon Braham. But so we can engage more on the conversation, I will not read their bios. Instead, I ask the audience to go ahead and take a look at the brochure that has all the information there. But I will start hearing from our guests. Then, like I mentioned, I will be monitoring for Q&A and using that platform. Let us start framing the conversation from the perspective, if you will, from the current role from both Sebastian, which is a CEO and founder of Adapt First, but also president and founder of French Tech Atlanta. And we'll talk a little bit how those things kind of comes together. And also with Brandon, who is the CTO and assistant city manager at Peachtree Corners. But he also runs everything of innovation that takes place at CuriosityLab, located at Peachtree Corners. So we know a little bit about how they got where they are. Let me start with Brandon, so we know a little bit about you and make it a little bit more personal. How did you get involved in city management?
Yeah, thank you all again, as Jorge said, for joining today. Funny story on that one. Actually, originally from Kansas, so middle of the country, go Chiefs and Jayhawks. But yeah, I came into local government just over 16 years ago through the new city movement that started in Georgia back in 2005 with the city of Sandy Springs. So came in through the private sector, so a different entry point into local government, worked on the private side, providing services to local government for the city of Sandy Springs, really that first private-public operating model that we saw take hold, and then was able to come over to the city of Peachtree Corners when they started in 2012 and helped start up the city from ground zero, and have been here since 2012, and have now an employee of Peachtree Corners, no longer in the private sector, so I am on the government side now. And just through that path, have kind of been through administration and finance and technology. I've always had an affinity for technology and what it can do for helping transform government and transform our daily lives as residents. And so a natural way through it, but love it. I'm glad to be here.
Everything is national. It has a reason, right? And because of that and the current role that you have and how you can melt together the CuriosityLab and Peachtree Corners as a system. Sometimes I forget that when I work with you, I tend to see you within the box of CuriosityLab, and you forget you have this other job. So, but Sebastian, let's learn a little bit about you. When I read your bio, of course, I've known you for a while too. I noticed that you have been very much involved in healthcare. What drove you to this field?
Well, was started in the healthcare and more precisely in animal health at the very early stage of my career, and started in London, worked in Europe in different countries, and they asked me to come in the US to help grow the US business. I spent about 20 years now in the US, mostly in healthcare in two big companies. One was a Sanofi division of Sanofi called Merial, based in Duluth, not far from Petrie Corner. And then the company was acquired and owned by Boehringer Ingelheim. So I worked as well at Boehringer Ingelheim for 2 years. I was the global vice president of digital and business transformation and marketing services in those two groups.
Excellent. Ania, you probably remember that when we first created the Global Commerce Council at the Chamber, our first CEO was from Marielle. So that's where the whole connectivity comes together, a small world. But you also have double role in the sense you also are very active in the board of the French American Chamber. Could you talk a little bit about what are the top priorities for the French Chamber? That way our audience is broad and there's an international component to that. I think this is kind of interesting, and it all comes into head later.
So I think it's you know, chambers of commerce have evolved over the years, and I think we are no different. Just to say, the French American Chamber of Commerce is the oldest foreign chamber of commerce in Atlanta. So we are deeply rooted locally. I think you have access to a very passionate community of French living in Atlanta. You know, many of us were very surprised when we came in that we would land in Georgia, and many of them would have a hard time to leave, or actually staying in Georgia because they enjoy it so much. Our mission has been really to create stronger relationship between France and the US. It's been a common theme. We are doing this through different events. I invite you to come to the Beaujolais Nouveau, which will occur tomorrow at Saint-Germain, which is one of our events, part of the chamber, to create those events where people can meet and have a business discussion in a more informal settings. We face different elements in our lives. You know, all of us experienced the COVID, which has been a very difficult thing for Chamber of Commerces because people couldn't meet together. Before that, we had the financial crisis, which was another big impact. I think to us, which will make the connection now to French tech, is that, France, we will talk a little bit more about it, but is experiencing, I think, a turnaround, another life, is evolving. It's trying to inspire a new generation of entrepreneurs. And I think the mission of the chamber is really to be here to support with the French tech, support those entrepreneurs that want to come to the US, and we're all here to make Atlanta their homes, inspire them to choose Atlanta every time they can, to grow their business in the US, and Atlanta has a lot of offers. So I think the point is that the chamber is evolving, but we are putting a big focus on leveraging what's happening in France is with this new energy and this new wave of entrepreneurs.
Great. I mean, between just by taking a look at your bios and dissecting that bio, we bring all the different elements that comes into the head of what we're talking about, because we talked about cities and city applications and the implication into smart cities, and then the global reach, and you talked about healthcare, and you talked about innovation. So all this comes together. So Brandon, let me get back to you. We noticed, I mentioned before that you manage in both roles, both as a CTO of the city and CuriosityLab. So technology is at the forefront of what you do. But you also says that the CuriosityLab at Peachtree Corners is the nation's first smart cities technology proving ground. What do you mean by this?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think first, a little background for the audience that may not know everything about CuriosityLab. It is a living laboratory that the city initiated and opened in 2019, where we took public infrastructure, what municipal governments usually very good at owning and operating, and reconfigured it in a way to allow for real world testing of technologies in the mobility space, the smart city space, and IoT on a public street, interacting with us in our day-to-day lives. So we have currently 4 autonomous shuttles here that are operating on the roadway, interacting with the human-driven population and our walkers and cyclists, and then some different areas in smart city for video analytics and such, all testing in this real-world application, taking use of public infrastructure to help push some of this forward. So when we think about that first in the world, one-of-a-kind environment, there's really 7 things that separate us from any other place in the world. We have a live 5G environment in partnership with T-Mobile. We cover all 3 of the spectrums, from millimeter wave to mid-band on 2.5 all the way to low band. And that is, it's not just here. T-Mobile is a big partner of ours, and they're here to help companies integrate into the network, test over 5G, and offer all the support that takes to get technologies onboarded and into the next sphere for 5G. The facility is owned and operated completely by the city of Peachtree Corners. So any company or university coming to test, there's only one place that they have to go for approval. And that usually hits my desk and our city managers. We have not said no yet. So we make it really easy for companies to take use of this infrastructure. And we also don't charge for the infrastructure. So it's not a pay-to-play environment. This is an economic development initiative for the city of Peachtree Corners. So our benefit comes through the activity here. So no charging. We respect IP, so we don't take any stake in intellectual property. Because of that, we've actually had several Georgia Tech researchers use our facility for research and development of some of their areas they're working on. Most recently, working with the School of Civil Engineering, who just won the NSF grant for a 4-year research study program on multimodal operations through autonomous shuttles and e-scooters and leveraging all the infrastructure. We can respect proprietary information because we've set this system up in a way that's segregated from day-to-day operations of the city. So when companies are here testing, if they need that data to stay secure, we can ensure that that can happen. We are a NIST 171 compliant facility. So I know the session right before us was talking around cybersecurity and the importance of that. So we did take the effort to be NIST 171 compliant, which is the highest level of data security for unclassified data. And then last, we carry general liability insurance on roads, just like every other municipality across the country. But what's unique is we also carry it for driverless vehicles. And we're the first in the world to do that. And we know that because we had to go to Lloyd's of London to secure that insurance. And there's not been a policy out there issued. So, because the insurance market, this is also a test site for them because they're trying to figure out how does autonomy play its role in our day-to-day lives.
Brandon, you packed a lot into that definition of what CuriosityLab, which is right on. Annie, I mean, like you mentioned, like next year for cybersecurity, we can unpack this thing and we could have conversation about each one of them. Because when you talk about 5G, this is not just about 5G application, but it's 5G as a vertical in the industry. You're one of the first, because we're talking about CuriosityLab being one of the first that takes 5G application, not just to smart mobility like you're doing with the track, but for any type of 5G application. So there's a lot that we could come back after. Let me go back to Sebastian, because Sebastian, we're talking in the panel about innovation in Georgia in general. You're also the CEO and founder of Adapt First. In a leading edge technology around digital transformation. Could you tell us a little bit about digital transformation and how you see that as also a vertical?
Sure, I'll make a comment just on what Brandon said, just to create the link a little bit sooner. French Tech and the French American Chamber of Commerce has decided to now be hosted at CuriosityLab, and I was a visiting scholar, part of Day1. It's an organization part of Georgia Tech on Internet of the Things, a think tank. And the first time I was invited through that organization to the opening ceremony of CuriosityLab, which was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I cannot exactly nail the time, but CuriosityLab was this amazing ecosystem where there were live integration of drones and autonomous vehicles and smart buildings and element of smart element part of that building. And it was just spectacular to me to have in one place all those technology that were converging, because now I'm going to make a link to I tell you more how we got there, but to digital transformation, my previous role. In animal health, we touch on everything. IoT, because you have connected cat, connected cows, smart farming that we need to understand, like the John Deeres of the world and ecosystems. And one of the pain points that organizations are facing is the difficulty to manage all those technologies that are coming at once. We're talking about AI, blockchains, and IoT, and this is extremely complex for legacy organizations in their own vertical, whether it's healthcare or manufacturing. And what we do in Adapt First is actually we help organizations to create large-scale transformation programs, and we help them to execute on it. The difference between us and some other consulting organizations is that we have actually done the job. So we were in those positions of transformation, and we went through the pain of doing it. So that's a major difference. We drove like $100 million bottom line impact on pricing, leveraging data, improving sales execution, impacting by $50 million. I mean, launching new business model like telemedicines in organizations that have done for 100 years vaccines and pharmaceutical products, and those transformations are extremely complex. So one of the things we've done at Adapt First is we create a roadmap to help them to go through this process. We have like not a secret recipe, but there's many white paper on it. We actually wrote a white paper with Georgia Tech, part of Day1, on digital transformations within IoT. But if you want me to elaborate, George, I can spend a little bit more time on explaining what are the steps. I'm not sure it might take.
No, we can talk forever about this thing, but you're doing the right thing, because the point of bringing all this together is one of the things that I've found, we just can't talk in a silo about each one of the things that you both have touched, right? And that's what sort of brings together the connectivities between these technologies, which then creates the innovation. And so it's great that you're bringing. Let me go back to something that Brandon was talking about. He gave a definition of how he described CuriosityLab. How about La France Tech, Atlanta? Why did you choose CuriosityLab?
Well, again, I think I shouldn't start with it, but it's something like.
Excuse me. Let me. I'm sorry to interrupt. And the reason I want to bring this up is because you and I have talked about this many times. When you think about France, you don't think about technology, right?
Sure.
You think about the great wines and the food and the city of light and so forth. But technology is very present, and innovation is very present. So how do you connect that to what you find in terms of innovation at CuriosityLab?
Well, it's a packed question, but I think in Brandon's comment, I don't know if you remember, he said something like, "It's free." No, that was when you're a chamber of commerce, it's a big decision element, I would say. But beyond that, it was just a right time, as I mentioned before. We started to discover what CuriosityLab could offer for companies. At the time of Day1 and Georgia Tech think tank around IoT. This was pretty spectacular capabilities. And one of our other member of the Chamber of Commerce also lived in Petrie Corner and had direct relationship with Brian. And we started to, investigate, if there were some opportunities to leverage that environment to make Atlanta a better destination for French companies that were looking at exporting into the United States. You have to remember that between the time we started that journey and now, a lot of things have happened. A lot of disruption in terms of difficulty to find talent. You've seen what is happening in California, and a lot of technology companies, getting out of California or New York. We're not going the reason there, but I think Atlanta came also at a good time for French tech because it's a very strong ecosystem for many reasons, which we'll cover probably later. But CuriosityLab was just this massive opportunity where we can provide a service to French companies and tell them, look, you are going to directly connect in an environment with many incubators, like an incubator, companies that are touching high-tech type of solution, whether it's autonomous vehicles or it's smart buildings, smart city, connected camera, cloud. Today we have an event, actually, Brandon invited me. We have OVH Cloud, which is a French company that has decided to come to and join CuriosityLab as well. So it's just a very dynamic environment, which is helping us to promote the message of why Atlanta. That's the reason why the Chamber and French Tech decided to join and be localized there.
Brandon, let me ask you, you explain what CuriosityLab, you as an economic developer, you touch many points in there, Sebastian, too, because you talk about the environment, the quality of life that you find there, and the competitive climate, et cetera, et cetera. We are sort of packaging all this, obviously, within the framework of innovation. And the result of that is French tech finding a home at CuriosityLab at Peachtree Corners. Brandon, could you comment beyond France and the event that is happening this afternoon about your global reach, and how have you gone disseminating the story about CuriosityLab? Because that's what it's all about. This is not about just Georgia, but this is a global reach out.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, because really, we see our job, right, as being that facilitator of innovation and creation, and just bringing this ecosystem together so we can learn together and move this forward together, and not one of us trying to do it on our own. And that takes, all of us as local government, as private companies here in the U.S., but in our international aspect, obviously the French are near and dear to us, but we do have some great relationships. We actually have 5 formal partnerships with other international countries. We have one with Israel, Canada, Taiwan, and the UK as well. So working with those companies to understand really what the benefit of the Southeast and Metro Atlanta has to offer as we continue to grow this ecosystem here. And I think, Sebastian hit on that. Just what we're able to provide now to companies in the Metro Atlanta region now is, we haven't had in the past. And we're seeing that explosion of talent and resources really start to formulate here. And then we're trying to use our infrastructure to help facilitate that to another level, offering up this kind of infrastructure for companies to build on, and then bringing people together at the seat of the table that maybe they didn't have an opportunity to before. So we partner with large corporate organizations. One of our greatest examples of collision that happened here was we were out here talking with the Georgia Tech research team on some projects, and Delta just happened to be here on a trade delegation learning more about CuriosityLab, and Georgia Tech and Delta got to talking, and Delta ended up funding a research project with Georgia Tech here at CuriosityLab. And so just having those incidental collisions happen here to help both the research university side and our private industry is really how we see this moving forward, and us being able to take leaps and bounds as we grow this.
Yeah, so basically what you've done is you've taken a basic infrastructure that you mentioned before and turning that into an ecosystem that creates these collisions, how you call it, then what generates is innovation. Let me ask you, Sebastian, since the French Tech, it's there, and now you have these companies from France, in addition to those other countries that Brandon mentioned, they're all colliding with each other in the good sense and producing innovation. How do you think that the activity and the innovation that it's been found at CuriosityLab can influence French technology?
Well, a lot of the innovation sometimes is just serendipity. It's like, I think that what Brandon described with the Delta example, we're still at a very early stage of our process. I take a minute because French Tech Atlanta was just, Atlanta was awarded that French Tech accreditation early this year, and we couldn't have done it without the support of the entire local ecosystem. Georgia Tech and City of Atlanta. So John Woodward was here this morning, and the Atlanta Chamber of Commerce. So there's a very rich ecosystem. We're all working together to make Atlanta, and the environment a great place. So I think it's just beyond just CuriosityLab. But if we talk about CuriosityLab, just walking into the building put you in an innovation mindset. You just you see an autonomous vehicle. The second thing you see is a door that can be remotely opened from anywhere, and the third thing you see is a robot. I mean, it's a very rich environment, I think, to generate ideas. More concretely for us, one of the things we've learned in digital transformation is that few companies in the legacy organization have really mastered the art of partnership. It's very complicated, like question like who owns the data, and how do you co-create some IP together when you're a digital company versus a legacy organization. These are very hard questions, but the key thing is that the success looks like when you don't even know which team is on which other team. And when you are in an environment like CuriosityLab, which is the opportunity to have open space, but also like private offices, I think it really fostered that environment for innovation. It's a high visually appealing environment with a lot of tech. I encourage all of you to go, but the environment you are in is very important. The people you are going to meet are important, and I think it was a great opportunity for us to be in this environment. We continue, I can continue to bring new organization and visit CuriosityLab. We had another startup from Bolloré organization, big organization in France, and immediately they connected to it and say, wow, can I bring one of my staff here? Can I, what do I do to do it? It's a very powerful environment.
Right. You use the word partners, and that's a question that I wanted to ask Brandon, because I agree with you, Sebastian. I mean, no organization can survive on its own. We just can't do silos technologies because innovation doesn't happen that way. So, Brandon's question for you, how do you define partnership at CuriosityLab, and what role does partnership have in that? And then multiple levels of partnerships, right? Meaning, from different types of organizations, corporations, et cetera. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, partnerships vary from company to company. How we evaluate it is the company partner making the facility environment better for the entire ecosystem, and how that can look in ways of donating technology that opens up new data streams for our research and development side of the house, or maybe they brought in subject matter experts to help facilitate conversations for projects that are going on. T-Mobile made the 5G investment, right? They put in the towers so that we could be a 5G active community. Some are your traditional cash investment to facilitate new things inside of the environment. So they're going to vary in many ways. And then, partnering with Sebastian and French Tech and the French American Chamber, our job is making sure people know about CuriosityLab, getting the word out. And then so partnering with organizations that Sebastian worked with is a big part of that, he's partnered with the Metro Atlanta Chamber, right? They're a partner because they help facilitate those conversations and grow the ecosystem here. So it can range in several different ways, but really just helping the environment be better so that it supports the companies that are in it.
Yeah, and Ro, if I can add to one of the
Sure.
questions you just asked me on why CuriosityLab, now, if I connect the dots with what we discussed before on transformation and French Tech, anyone that has been doing this job of change management or complex change, we all know that success goes through inspiring people to act, and we know that this is a very hard thing to do. French Tech itself is an example of inspiring an entire country, which probably is the hardest thing to do. Inspiring it within an organization is hard. Inspiring in a city is very hard. But inspiring a nation is very, very hard. So, when Macron said, we wanted France to be a startup nation, they wanted to have 25 unicorns by 2025. These are things to say we can do it, and trying to inspire people to act. Having said that, what I think CuriosityLab has done is that they are inspiring people that the future is not tomorrow, the future is now. And this is what struck me when I saw CuriosityLab the first time, is that the future is now at CuriosityLab. You do see autonomous vehicle, you do see those scooters automatically going back home. You do see the drones flying around to drop your mail or packages. You have that in your corner, and seeing is believing. Seeing really helps to say, yeah, this is something tangible I can see. I understand why I need to act to understand how my business model can evolve. So I think, what of the great accomplishment of CuriosityLab, and there are many other probably in the area, is that it really helped to visualize that the future is now.
Right. Yeah. You're right. You're right on track on that. And a lot of these have to do with how they approach this collision of ideas, if you will. And Brandon, you talked before about how CuriosityLab distinguishes yourself. You talk about 5G and you don't charge, and IP and all that. But could you talk a little bit into a little bit more detail, because the way I see CuriosityLab, there are four areas. So you have the innovation center that Sebastian mentioned. That's where the France Tech Atlanta, it's sort of headquarters. So there's the innovation component, the innovation center component of that. But then you also have the track for autonomous vehicle, but you're also a mobility platform. And you describe the city of the future. Could you go into explaining a little bit of this? Because that's where the whole technologies and what type of innovation is happening in these different sectors.
Yeah, so we'll start first one on the roadway, because that's usually the most visual one. So we took a traditional office park road, reconfigured it, put in dedicated lanes on the outside, and then left the 2 inside lanes for the human-driven population. So the AV autonomous vehicles have a dedicated lane to operate in, because we really see ourselves as the walk phase of crawl, walk, run in the development of some of this technology. Kind of figured it out in a closed laboratory, but you're not quite ready for Midtown Atlanta. So let's come here where you're still interacting with the human population, but it's a little easier application. So these AVs are interacting, majority of their intersections are at 90-degree angles, a lot of good visual on those. And then, but they are interacting with 8,000 cars a day as they go through the corridor, and cyclists, because we have a multi-use trail that runs through this. Deer, as we all know, Metro Atlanta has a lot of deer. So they have to figure that out. And there's mature tree canopy. So right now the leaves are falling everywhere. There's shadows everywhere. And the LiDAR on these autonomous vehicles have to figure that out, because they struggle with that kind of stuff.
So wasn't that an example of what happened with Alley 1 and Alley 2?
Yeah, they had a hard. So we opened in September of 19, so just a little over 2 years ago, and we had a first deployment of this autonomous shuttle, and leaves started covering the roadway markings. We have a 13% grade hill. Vehicle just didn't know what to do with it, because it was the first time it's ever operated in a facility like this that wasn't flat, wide open, sunny. So they modified a lot of the autonomous systems and have now come out with the version 2.0 that's here, and it's actually operating very well, but still working through some of those obstacles that this type of facility presents. We also have a vehicle that we purchased to allow companies to hang technology on. We were talking to a lot of the startup companies that were building computer vision or LiDAR systems for vehicles, but they didn't have a vehicle to test on. So we use it just as like a test mule. Have a company from Israel doing some ADAS system. That's the Advanced Driver Assistance System. They're doing some testing on a new application they've built inside the vehicle now. And then really the city street of the future. So with the fiber backbone and the 5G connectivity, we're also doing a lot of connected vehicle applications. So we're doing vehicle to infrastructure, vehicle to vehicle, and vehicle to pedestrian. So we're really creating that connected environment where we are talking to all the things that are happening. Cybersecurity we could probably spend an entire hour talking about the cybersecurity implications around what a connected smart city looks like. And worked with one of the Georgia Tech researcher teams who were looking at exactly that, decoding and encoding the transmissions that are going over these connected vehicle applications. And then last, the Innovation Center that Sebastian hit on, we really tried to bring to life and create that place that generates activity in the mind that says, I want to invent here, I want to try something new. And that is actually where we partnered, and ATDC down at Georgia Tech actually staffs a full-time person inside our innovation center, and they just kicked off a 5G accelerator in partnership with the city and T-Mobile, and they're running that program here.
And Rory, if I can make a parallel to French Tech, what strikes me with CuriosityLab as well is it's really the doing. A lot of people, you mentioned the IDs, now we are in a world, it's a new era, AI is going to transform the world. We know it's the most profound technology change we're going to face as humankind, or that we faced. And a lot of people in digital transformation are still stuck in like a lot of ideas, but when we move to execution, it's getting much more complicated because you don't have the skill set to do. What I love about what just Brandon said for like 5 minutes is like, he's in the doing. He's doing it every day on multiple type of technologies, whether it's smart buildings, smart city, EV, and it's concrete problems. It's the leaves falling from the trees, not like an idea of something that is happening. And I think if we go back to the parallel of French Tech, this is where, as a nation, again, going back to the difficulty to motivate people to do, France, as you said, was known for the good wine, the food, the romantic city of Paris, and so on and so on, sometimes about strikes, sometimes with higher taxes. But I think in about 5 years, we've been able to completely change the game and have a new look. Then VCs and private equity had a difficult time to invest in French companies because of those pain points that I just mentioned before. They were hesitant. Now it's very easy to see a round of investment of more than $100 million of those new unicorns that were just done in less than 6 years. And the reason why it's happening is because people move from having ideas of wanting to just work for a large organization to start the entrepreneurship journey and start to do. And I think, what I really like about CuriosityLab is that it has this human touch of, doing. And this is what we need if we want to lead the way, inspire others, and accelerate change.
Right, and one of the things I like about the leadership at CuriosityLab is that it make things happen. There's no bureaucracy because there's just one single entry point, and you guys make the decision, because that's a source of frustration in a lot of pilot programs in other locations that I have seen. You do the pilot program, but you can't scale because of the complexities of the different bureaucracies and so forth and so on. But what we're talking about here too is I don't want to lose, because I think it's very important as an economic development that we deal all the time at Pendleton and on innovation. Is you mentioned with Brandon about your mobility platform, and you purchase a vehicle, and this is extremely important from the for the reach out to to global innovation is that you have innovative companies and startups anywhere in the world, but it's very difficult for them to implement within their own vehicles. So you have provided an actual a platform with wheels that any company can hang anything in there and they'll be able to test it out. And also it's not just for testing, but also for demonstrating. So if I'm a company in France, or I'm a company in Spain, or I'm a company in Taiwan, I can bring my potential client from the United States, because that's the market I'm trying to reach, with two PhD corners instead of flying all the way to Taiwan, for example, where they be able not only to test, but to demo. That's extremely important point on that. And then the other point that I want you to come in, because we tend to think about smart cities and lights and autonomous vehicles, but we haven't talked too much about electric vehicle, because at the end, electric vehicles are part of smart mobilities. And then the space beyond the roads. And Sebastian, you mentioned drones. That's what's next at CuriosityLab. So could you both comment on that, on those 2 points, electric vehicles and testing?
Yeah, I mean, big infrastructure bill passed. A lot of focus is going to be going towards EVs. How do we build them? How do we support them? How do we advance the technology around battery? So doing a lot of that, and then drones. I mean, we were fortunate to have the deputy administrator of the FAA here today, talking in person about CuriosityLab and how can we work together to push drone activity forward. From the EV space, right, as we think, we're going to see on the government side a lot about the infrastructure. How do we support the charging infrastructure as more and more EV adoption takes place? But how can we not solely rely on the grid? So we've got a company out of France, Wattway, testing the application of solar panels on the roadway and the right-of-way, generating that power, and we've hooked it directly into a charging station to generate enough power to charge an electric vehicle. So we're not so dependent on the grid, and we can do true net zero power generation. So those are the things that Sebastian hit it on the head. We're here to do it and try to make these things happen for the companies.
Yeah, I think there's a broader EV is one solution. France has been launching a new 2030 roadmap in terms of innovation, and they are betting big. I cannot comment if it's the right technology or not, but they are betting big on hydrogen as well in terms of mobility. I think all companies are trying to address what is the most efficient and less polluting way to move from point A to point B. So I think the pollution is one of the key drivers. Like there's a new startup reached unicorn status called Waga Energy, which is like green gas that's gaining momentum in France. I think what I'd be curious to know on the CuriosityLab is what is done in addition of just EVs in this space, like trying to address the broader problems that not only the momentum built on EVs, but there's all kind of question around green energy in cities. How do we test now? There's a lot of discussion about nuclear energy, to make it greener, and of course there's a lot of debate but I think it's addressing that big question around clean tech, clean energy, addressing pollution, and EV is part of it, but it's only one element.
Yeah, sustainability, right?
Yep.
And even from that perspective, solar roadway could you, and we testing specifically panels on the road for generating power through the sun, and also from vehicles going over it. So all that, it's all part of that innovation coalitions that we're talking about. We have two questions from the audience that I'd like to address. One is, number one is, I guess we are generating a lot of energy, and there's a lot of people that really are interested to go and see what's happening there. So the question is there an open house that you all offer, or what will be the procedure to go and visit and actually see, like Sebastian, kind of feel this innovation and this activity that is going on. Any suggestion for that, Brandon?
Yeah, I'll put my email in the box. We give tours all the time because our job is to get the word out so people know that this facility is here and that it's open for them to use. We are open. So I'll drop my email in there. Feel free to reach out. And yes, I see the question. ICMA did a profile on us a couple of years ago. So we have been in contact with ICMA through that process and doing also for their intern program. Have not had conversations with India, so email me on that one.
Okay, but from that perspective too, and you touched that a little bit earlier about your international or your global reach out, right? But could you comment about some specific, some of the reach out that you have done to other smart cities or innovation center at a global scale?
Yeah, we took a trade delegation to Canada, one, because they run an autonomous vehicle innovation network in the province of Ontario. So we do that. We work closely with our consul generals here in Atlanta to get the word out. Jorge and we did a presentation for Japan and the companies over there. So constantly doing the reach out for internationally to make sure we bring those collisions here to the Southeast and to Metro Atlanta.
Right, and then obviously it's not just you go out and meet the world, if you will, at Smart Cities Conference, but also it's not just about missions, right? Because you have also direct reach out to a lot of these innovation centers through different partners, and you're welcome to that engagement and being open to that. And that's what happened with French Tech and some of the Canada for that matter.
Yeah, no, just one last word maybe on French Tech is we are seeing a huge uptake in dynamism in the region. I mean, tonight we have this OVH cloud meeting at CuriosityLab, which is ribbon cutting, which is the leading company in cloud competing against Amazon. Sunday, for example, was a startup now that just created in February. They just raised $100 million. So a 6-month-old startup, a French startup, raising $100 million in less than 6 months. They are in the payment business with QR code for restaurants. We have Cedreo, which is another company on the 3D side for helping builders to create homes, virtual homes in less than 2 hours. Ringover just came in. We have a lot of startup in the health tech with BioSerenity that did a presentation at the grand opening. Audox did the presentation at the opening in CuriosityLab, BioSerenity as well. So we just have this incoming number of startups that just so excited to come to the Atlanta area, and it's great for everyone, and we're looking forward to work with everybody in the ecosystem.
Right, and also, Sebastian, you've commented about the importance about the partnerships and the activity that happens at the Innovation Center. But could you, both of you, actually comment a little bit about the importance also about any assistance provided as part of soft landing, if you will, because not necessarily a company is coming here just to do manufacturing or whatever it is, but it's that connectivity that they need to find. So could you talk a little bit about that?
This is exactly why French Tech is here. We do soft landing for French companies that are coming to the US. CuriosityLab is a big. We just had lunch with Brandon on Monday, and it's exactly what we discussed is such an ecosystem, how we can then we have the administrative side with the French American Chamber of Commerce, so legal and accounting and for immigration visas. But the other thing that French Tech is doing, and is more for information for the audience, is that we have a French Tech visa. We make it super easy for American company as well, American startup, that wants to leverage the ecosystem in France. Very large network of engineers, a lot of talent there. And the French Tech visa really helps so many companies to get talent from the US, as an example, to France as well. So if you have any needs to evaluate, your expatriation in France for tech talent, you can reach out to French Tech as well. We work on the soft landing on both sides.
Yeah, and talking about the talent, when we talk about CuriosityLab and when you talk about PhD Corners, you're not limiting to PhD Corners, but as part of that partnership is the integration of CuriosityLab into the larger ecosystems, not only in Metro Atlanta or in Georgia, but national. Because Brendan, you could address some of those partnership that you've done at the national level, not only in autonomous vehicles or electric vehicles, but around drones and cybersecurity. In fact, relating back to the previous panel, you just hosted within this climate of devices and connectivities between devices and 5G's application with the Secret Service, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, because you have attracted their attention to this space, not only from the smart mobility, but from the cybersecurity. In fact, also the Secretary of Transportation came over. Any comments about that?
Yeah, we know, right? Rising tide lifts all boats. So
right.
We want our region to grow first and then supplement everybody else. So we do as much as we can making those connections at the national level. We did have Secretary Buttigieg here a couple of months ago, and then the FAA Deputy Administrator today. And then, yeah, we had a fireside chat with the Secret Service and FBI around cybersecurity and its implications from the consumer level all the way to us as the connected local government side of the house. And they're looking to do some of their field training here on site using our infrastructure. So looking forward to that. And I know we're running out of time, but really thank you all for tuning in and letting us share our story, and Sebastian and the things that we're doing internationally and with the French. It's going to be some exciting times.
Right. And before we close, and again, we're running out of time, so we don't want to go overtime, and give some time back. But there's one more comment that I would like to make. And because as an economic developer, the developer working with CuriosityLab and with French Tech and the different chambers related to innovation, one of the things that we get questions about is what is the role that CuriosityLab can play in influencing policies for market entry into the United States, in terms of, for example, things that could be done at CuriosityLab that can be in partnership with the different regulatory agencies of the U.S. government to help direct the right policies to promote, whether it be the cybersecurity application or the hardware of or open source software technology, vis-a-vis broadband, for example. That's another area that this partnership are working and trying to sort of respond to the needs of innovators across the world, and using the platform of CuriosityLab to have that conversation with the different regulatory agencies of the U.S. government. Any final comment on that, Brandon?
Yeah, I just say that's what we're trying to line up so that when international companies come, they know if they go through our facility to test either mobility, cybersecurity, or air mobility, that if they go through this process, then they're meeting the certifications that are needed by those regulating agencies. So we're working closely with NHTSA and FAA and FCC on these regulations, so we can be a partner of theirs and get them to designate this place as a site for them for certification through some of their obstacles or challenges that they present.
Great. Well, Sebastian and Brandon, thank you very much for sharing a fascinating conversation. We can unpack this and talk forever on those. So let me turn it over to you, John or Annie, and I want to thank everybody for joining us too and engaging.
Thank you, Jorge. Thank you, Jorge. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Sebastian. We appreciate your interesting conversation, and I'm sure we are going to hear a lot about the CuriosityLab and French Tech. And Sebastian, I am very interested in exchanging notes with you as to what we can do to invite other companies from other countries, to this part of the region. John, any thoughts for you, sir, from you?
No, it was a great panel. I wish we had a little more time. There were some unique features of Peachtree Corners I wanted to highlight, but Brandon did a great job. And we talk a lot about Peachtree Corners at Georgia Tech. We're thinking of moving the whole campus to Peachtree Corners, let's face it. I mean, and Sébastien, I wish you had said a lot more about the Global French Tech, because it's an organization that's all over the world, and it's grown very fast in less than 5 years. It is the brainchild of Emmanuel Macron, the young guy who's president of France, running for office yet again next year. And he's done a great job injecting money, capital into the French economy and making it shape up, as you said.
Yeah.
So great to have both of you. We really thank you. You fitted very well within the concept of our global forum. And it was great to see Jorge, who has not lost any of his vim and vigor in pursuing our speakers for in-depth responses. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. Thank you,
Take
Brandon,
care.
Sebastian.
Bye-bye.